Move raised the question, would this happen in the NFL? Russell Wilson says if the NFL had games over the weekend, the Seahawks would have sat out too. Adding, quote, for the Seahawks, we're definitely discussing what do we do next? How do we make a change? Joined now by Fox NFL analyst LeVar Arrington, starting with you, Acho. Hey. You agree with Russ here?
Gentlemen, I know y'all are card players. Growing up in my household, we played a game, we called it NT, but I think most people call it BS. And it's when you can tell some NT stands for not true. And it's when it's when you can tell somebody lying. See, Russ, I gotta call BS. And I gotta call BS because it's so easy to talk. It's so easy to say, well, if we were playing, we would sit out, we would miss out on a game. Now, I put Russell Wilson in the same category of LeBron James. Regardless of what they do on the court, they will always be better human beings in my eyes for what they've done off the field or off the court. So Russell Wilson, superstar human being in my mind, but I just think he's lying right here. He's lying to himself because Marcellus LeVar, when I look at the goal of sitting out, when I look at the goal of what the NBA players accomplished, Russ, if you were going to take off a game in the event y'all were playing this past Friday or this previous week, what will change between now and when opening season kicks off in 13 days, or really 10 days on that Thursday? What will change? Jacob Blake will still be fighting for his life, more than likely. All these systemic injustices going on in the world, it will still exist. And so I don't think that anything, Marcellus, I don't think that anything, LeVar, will have changed between now and the 2-week mark. So then it makes me beg the question, so what would you really have been sitting out for, Seahawks or any other NFL player, if you were going to sit out now, but you won't sit out in 2 weeks? It reminds me of 2 months ago when everybody was posting their pictures, their little thirst traps on Instagram, but then Tuesday came around. And it was Blackout Tuesday. And you better have posted your black square on Instagram on Tuesday in order to avoid being publicly ridiculed. Well, are you doing it to not be publicly ridiculed? Are you doing it just to fall in line? Or are you doing it because you actually care about the cause? Again, Russell Wilson, phenomenal human being to me, but I just call BS on this stance because in the event, Russ, you were going to sit out had you played this previous week, then your goal should still have been and should still be, wait a second, we should still sit out whenever that time comes.
Debate 101. Use your words against them and see how they go.
Here we go.
My initial point was the same. My initial stance was, what's going to effectively change in terms of what the scoreboard looks like as you're measuring what change is from now in 2 weeks when the NFL season starts? I would love to hear that answer because my guesswork takes me to places that makes you guys look disingenuous. And I don't want to make that assumption unless it's going to be backed up and be real. Another thing that makes me kind of pause in this situation, even though I believe that Russell Wilson would have sat out, I think the Seahawks would have sat out. I think a lot of players in the NFL would sit out. Let me make sure I make that clear. Because we are in that world, Acho, you talked about, where everyone is going to do what is the flavor of the month, do what is the fad of the month. Even though there's going to be real work being supported behind the scenes by some of these players, it's not going to be the majority. We already proved that in the NBA when Doc Rivers had to stand up there and say, everybody's wearing the T-shirts, everyone has the messaging, but 20% of you guys are registered to vote. We already know that there's going to be this bell curve, and 10% of the guys are going to be for the cause and the action. And 10% of the guys are like, man, I don't even trip on all this stuff. I'm just here to ball. And then 80% are there for the swaying. Whatever we're going to do, we're going to do it. In a world of followers looking for likes. And I told you, I'm a leader looking for love. And we're just in two different places right now where you can win the optical game. You can win the optical illusion of saying you're really down for something if you just go out there and show these measures that aren't fully supported by actions. Last point on this, y'all, we got to protect the golden goose. We have to protect our golden geese. And the climb for power and the climb for us to have more of a voice and say in this world, those who have this economic base, those who are really affluent, like a Russell Wilson, highest paid player in the NFL, we need to protect them instead of putting more on their plate saying that they need to solve all the world's ills as well as complete touchdown passes. And I think that pressure that Russell was feeling to say this is the same pressure in the offseason where Drew Brees comes out against Kaepernick and then a few months later is wearing a Jacob Blade tape around his helmet. You know what that pressure makes you do? Not always say exactly what you're really feeling and what you exactly will do.
Russ, why you lying? Why you always lying? Try to tell you, Russ, why you lying? Russ ain't going, man, look here. Hey, I'm glad you brought up golden egg, Marcellus Wiley, because talking about putting too much pressure on the golden goose, the golden geese. Acho, you and I both know this. There are how many people that are fighting for a job on a 53 active man roster in football? All right. Now, it's like, what, 60, 70? You start with something like
90.
that. Some
Start
crazy
90.
number, right?
Yep.
90. That's a lot of bodies. Now, you answer me this one, Batman. Riddle me this, guys. If you're going to sit out that game, and mind you, this is the same exact team that let a guy go, cut him, jobless, unemployed, for trying to sneak a lady through the front door of a hotel. You're telling me that outside of your golden goose or geese, that somebody's aren't going to be collateral damage to sitting out a game in protest? Ultimately, what goal are you achieving if you lose your job and your voice and your ability to impact change? And who are you as a leader if you are leading these guys down that lane? So I would ask, how gold is your geese or your goose or your egg if you're going to have collateral damage with guys after this takes place? Because in the NBA, it's 12 guys. In the league, it's 53 plus. That's a lot of moving parts and a lot of bodies to sit there and say, this is what we're going to do without a clear goal in mind.
The other thing, y'all both bring up great points. It's so nice when we can agree, especially on a Monday. Sometimes I like starting on my day, lowering my blood pressure, just agreeing with these two intelligent gentlemen. The first thing Marcellus said, which I agree with, is this. Let's remember, last year, everybody was standing during the national anthem. This year, in the NBA, this year, the majority of players are kneeling during the national anthem. It is mathematically impossible and just realistically impossible that every player just swayed their opinion. So what that means is there are probably some imposters on both ends, people doing things just to do it. Remember, last year, it wasn't cool to take a knee. This year, it sure as heck ain't cool if you stand. So I don't really care about doing something just to do it. Do it because you actually have internal convictions and you want to do what is right. Now, to LeVar's point, there's some truth to that. Remember, in the NBA, your leaders, your beacons of light, the people that draw, that move the needle, LeBron James, you got your Kawhi Leonards, you got your Anthony Davis, you got your Giannis's, all people that are, well, how do we say, black. In the NFL, you got your Tom Brady's, you got your Drew Breeses, you got your Phillip Rivers, you got your Aaron Rodgers. How do we say this? These guys are white. And so even if you, Russell Wilson, wanted to say, you know what, I'm going to sit this one out, well, what's Drew Brees about to do? Because in the NBA, the reason it was so strong is it was collective. In the NFL, it don't matter if you want to sit. What's the other guy going to do? Alvin Kamara's holding out. He can sit. But if Drew Brees plays, the show will go on. Aaron Jones, Packers running back, he can sit. But if Aaron Rodgers plays, the show will go on. Phillip Rivers, if he plays, the show will go on. Tom Brady, Mike Evans can sit. But if Brady plays, the show will go on. LeBron James, if he sits, music's